Hello everyone and welcome to my home on the hillside here in Wales. I'm Caroline and today I'm going to show you some progress. Look at this. I've got bits of fabric all over me. I'm in a bit of a mess. I've been clearing out some fabric and clearing up all some little bits and pieces, and fleece is really not the best thing to wear when you're playing about with little bits of fibres and fabric, unless you want to look like you're covered in bits of fibre and fabric, which I do. Anyway, moving on. Do you remember last week I said I was going to work on quilting this? There was a top that I made, or a flimsy, in France on my holiday last year, and I was going to get it all done for this week to show you. And I very carefully placed this quilt in this position because if I move it about at all, I'll show you here, it's not finished. And do you want me to tell you about my disaster? Well, I've been thinking that I've seen people do like wavy lines like this on their quilts. So far I've only done straight. So I thought I'm going to do this on this quilt because it's very angular. It's very straight, linear, would you call it, I suppose. So I thought I'm going to do some wiggly lines. Well, I started doing wiggly lines and I've never done it before. I should have practiced more. It really isn't well done. Now, I'd done the whole of it with big gaps. Then I did another half of it with something in between the gaps. So I have an awful lot of ugly quilting on this quilt. And I thought, maybe it'll be okay. And I looked at it and thought, no, this is not okay. I hate it. I think I've completely trashed this quilt. And it was so pretty. And now it's horrible. And I don't know if we can show you much on the back. It's rather unwieldy on my little desk. The back you can really see that it's not uniform on the back. Against all these straight lines, it's just not working. Maybe if I'd gone for curly whirly, which I didn't, it would have been better. So I decided, that's it, bite the bullet, take all this out. But I'd already taken out most of the sewing I'd done to hold it all together. So if I take all this out, I've then got to rebaste it, which is doing the big stitches, and I really didn't want to do that. So I thought, right, I need to come up with a solution. I came up with one. So I'm going to watch. I've got my cup of coffee here and I don't want to knock it over my quilt. If I open this up and show you, I love the quiet rustling sound of a quilt. Ooh, it's lovely. You can see here we've got this piece. This is still the old sewing, the old quilting, and this here is what I want to do. I'm not sure if it'll show you better if I come right close. Now, I've never really done much in the form of hand quilting, so I'm getting better. The only thing is, when you improve on a quilt, you can see the stark difference. So my stitches are getting slightly better, but I prefer that. I think it's much nicer. I'm just going with the lines on the quilt for the moment. But what I do is I got this. This is this frame thing. I ordered it from Temu, and I just imagined it was going to be a lot bigger than it is. So it's really small. You've got to keep moving it. And the problem is, you clip your quilt onto it. I get so much of this quilt. You put it where you want it to be, and then you put it around, and you clip these on. Now, I'm not going to do it because I'm very sceptical that these are going to last very long. And I don't think you can just buy replacements of these. So I'm not going to overdo it now. I'd like this to last at least till the end of this quilt. So I got some large embroidery hoops, but they're not large quilting hoops, and I can't get the width of the quilt between the two circles. So that's why I went for this. And the jury's out. I'll get to the end of the quilt and see how I feel about them then. I'm just used to them being round, any sort of sewing frame. So it's taken a bit of getting used to. Anyway, I've forgotten where I was going to with this. Right, so what I'm doing, I'm putting that block onto an area. So, there we go, I'll show you. I started off by putting it there. Then I unpicked just the yellow ugly lines. Then I hand quilted. And then I've moved on and I've done another one. I think I've done 3 now. I hope I've done 3. I have been keeping count. So, nope, I'm halfway through. Yep, I've got a few more rows to go on that one. I've gone all the way around the outside and I'm just coming along like that. So I've got 2 more rows, I think it is, to do on that one. And then I'll move on to another square. And this is going to take me weeks. I might as well admit it, it is not going to be a quick job. So this quilt is not going to be finished anytime soon. But while I'm doing all this, I'm thinking what I can do here. Now, I could leave it blank. It's not a problem. I don't, I'll put that down there. I don't want to put straight lines because this quilt is very unlikely to be square. And I'm going to end up, they're just going to highlight the fact that it's not really very straight if I put 2 or 3 lines in there. So I may, just may, get a stencil and put like some circles and hand quilt some circles on there, or I could zigzag. Not keen on that because it's ideally you'll get the corners perfect, and perfect doesn't come into my vocabulary when it comes to craft or sewing. So I'm thinking I'd possibly go for circles. I'm not quite sure. What would you do? Would you leave this blank? It's going to have enough quilting to hold it together anyway. It's just to give it more quilty look. So would you do anything? Would you put circles? Would you put lines? Would you do something else? If you've got any suggestions, I would love to hear them. Please drop them in the comments below. And also don't forget, the comments are a fabulous place on a video for finding more tips and tricks. Oh, I hate that bit. I keep seeing it now. It's right in the centre. It'll be okay when all the rest is done. Oh, I've left my cotton upstairs now, but it's a variegated. It goes from a very, very pale blue to a mid blue. I thought that would go nicely with this because I want it to be seen. I don't want it to disappear. So I thought that was probably the best colour to go for. And there's an end there. I'm going to snip that now because I've popped the knot in and there. And then I thought, well, I'll trim those later. And if I forget and I pull those, I'll pop the knot back out. And it just gets fiddly to pop it back in again. So that is my progress on that. So sorry, no update on it at the moment, really. It's just, I'm worse now than I was yesterday lunchtime. I just got loads and loads to undo now. But never mind, it'll give me a challenge. And I'm going on holidays in 2 weeks' time, so I may take it with me and then work on it just occasionally on a quiet night if we're watching some TV or sitting out and having a cup of coffee by the lake, something like that. I'll think about it. So let's move on to the next thing, which is, as you all know, if you've been watching me regularly, my 200 quilt blocks book. And I'm trying to get through all 200 quilt blocks. I've got a fair pile this week, but we need to talk about this. Now, this is partial seams, I think they call it, where you sew some of it. See if I can describe what you do. You sew down here, but you leave a seam allowance, and then you sew down this bit here. And I tried. I unpicked it a few times, and there are some folds and things. I really didn't get on well with that. So I decided once is enough, I'm done, but I will never purposely do partial seams ever again. Maybe if you do it enough, you'll get better, but I didn't find any improvement from beginning to end of this, so no, that's not for me. Right, I've got this star. There are so many different names for these stars, and I'm not sure what they're all called. You got this one, which I think they said to use, is it 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 different, 5 I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes, 5 different fabrics, and I was a bit sceptical. I don't like it with 5 fabrics. I think it's too fussy. You can't see the shape of it. It just looks like a splurge. Looks like, I don't know, somebody's dropped their crayons into a box and then melted them all. So I'm not so keen on that. I'm sounding very negative about my blocks today. Let's get on to some positive, and I love this one. See what I mean? Bits everywhere, and they stick to me. That, I've got a thing about pink at the moment anyway. I just love pink fabric. And this one is, it took a long time because there were lots of little blocks, but I thoroughly enjoyed making that one, and I love the look. So, yep, that one gets the top marks. I've got this one, which is, bow tie, I think this was called. This was another one where you did partial seams, and I didn't enjoy this. But because the pieces were so much bigger than this one, can you see how little those pieces were? It was very difficult to correct any mistakes, because you had a bit more room for fudging and sort of stretching it a little bit to get it to fit. So that was okay. And then I just like doing anything with half square triangles. Now it's a little bit out, you can see there, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm sure you're not going to tell anyone. I can't remember what they call this, but I've seen these put on end like that, and they've been called Chinese lanterns. Now, maybe it'd be better with the better side showing, I'm not sure. I quite like that look, and then you could put like a little if you get a little square and put it there, so you've got a little bit there and it looks like they're hanging, if you see what I mean. I won't try and explain that to you. My coffee hasn't kicked in yet. And I do apologise because when I'm speaking, I start speaking very slowly because I know a Welsh accent is really difficult to understand. Let's move that out of the way. But I notice by the time I get to the end of the video, I'm talking really, really, really quick like this because we all talk really, really quick like this when we're in Wales. So I'm trying to slow down, but I'm also drinking a cup of coffee. So by the time we get to the end of this video, I think we'll be going like a supersonic rocket. So I got this one. I was really disappointed. I know, complaints again, but look. I got some green, I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure where it came from. It must have been on the fabric. I didn't look dirty when I cut it, but something spludged green on there, so I'm hoping it'll wash out. But that one is, well, they say it's hourglass, but I see a windmill. It depends how you look, doesn't it? So that's what I would say. I'm going to call that a windmill one. It's this one which was very basic, but very easy to do because it was very basic. I don't know what I'd do with that. If I was going to join them together, I could make a few. I'm going to have to get a mirror and then I can show you then what would happen if we double them up. This is another star, different name again, but I can't remember which one. And then we got this one. I didn't realise how drab these colours were until I put them together. So even with the brighter green, they still seem quite drab, don't they? Which wouldn't be... It all depends what the theme of your quilt is going to be. If you want happy, dappy, cheerful quilts, then that's not going to work. If you wanted to do something like, I don't know, Civil War colours, then those greens would look lovely on it. So it's all, as we say here, do you say horses for courses? We say that. Horses for courses. Another pink one. You know I like pink. So I like this one. This is a 9-patch and snowball. These snowballs are fun to make because you think, oh, you've got to cut little tiny triangles and sew them on. You don't. You actually sew a square on and then chop that end off. Iron it flat and you've got a snowball shape. Well, it's not quite a snowball, is it? We'll call it a snow. Everybody calls them snowballs, so we'll call them snowballs. And then a 9-patch because it's got 9 patches. Got this one, which I think is supposed to be another star. I'm not quite sure. I like that. I wasn't sure when I started. I thought, it's a bit sombre on the corners, but I don't think it is. And when, let's have a look. I haven't got any white fabric here, but if you put it against the white, it suddenly brightens it, doesn't it? So I think that's going to be fine with a white border. Got this one, which was nice. You made the one and then you joined 4 together. So that was quite easy to do. I enjoyed making that one. I'd like to come up with something to do, to put more of those onto a quilt because I think it's very pretty, but I think a whole quilt just like that might be a little bit over the top. I don't know. What do you think? Would I get away with it? Perhaps if I do different colours? Possibly. And then we got this one. And this has got, you know, I'm doing this now and I can vaguely remember telling, I think what it was last week, I'd made so many, I put some over to this week, but I'd already looked at them as part of the pile for last week, because I'm pretty sure I haven't shown you these blocks. And I put the birds swooping in all different directions because I didn't have enough to all face one direction. And I thought, well, generally, a quilt is seen from many directions anyway, so I'll get away with that. So that is one of those. One day I'm going to have to sort through and see how many oranges, how many pinks, how many purples and yellows, so I can make sure I don't end up with it being overly purple or overly pink. But I'm on block, let's have a look. I'm on block number... Here we are, put one of my little leaders in. I've just done the Barbara Freitchie, that one. I don't think I've done 8-pointed. Yes, I have. I've done 8-pointed star. I don't know where it is, but I did enjoy doing it. It was another partial seam one. So next one I got is Road to Oklahoma. So that is number 49. I'm nearly a quarter of the way through. And I'm sure I accidentally went ahead of myself, didn't I, at one point? So I'm not sure how far ahead I went, but there are so many patterns in here. Look at this. Some of them I can't wait to make. Some of them I'm like, I will make it because I said I would, but I'm not gripped with enthusiasm for that one. But some of these, look at them, they're beautiful. So I really can't wait to get further in my book. So we're a quarter of the way there. Won't be long. So now I can put these on the pile that I've shown you. Or should I show you how big the pile is before I carry on? I know, I'm in a very chatty mood now. My coffee's kicking in. So that's the blocks I've made so far. You may remember some of these from other videos. Lots and lots of blocks. That's one of my favourites. I love the teddy bears. So you can see I'm trying to keep a theme of all my blues are going to be in roughly the same fabrics, and the same with my purples, my pinks. So there's some sort of uniformity in the quilt. Right. So let's move on to something. This is block related. And I want to show you something. Let me see. I should have two things here. And I'm going to, off camera, I'm going to sneak and find out which one I want to show you first, because they're identical, but there's an obvious difference. It's not supposed to be an obvious difference, but there is. This one. Right. So I decided I wanted to make some flying geese, and I've heard so many people, and I've read so many books and magazines saying how you can make flying geese really easily. Now, I was sceptical. I looked and I thought, no, that doesn't work in my mind. The more I look at it, the less sense it makes. But there's a saying in the patchwork world that is, just follow the process, trust the process, and it'll always be okay in the end. It doesn't always work like that. But in this case, it almost did first time. So I've ended up with this, which is 4 flying geese in a row. And you can see my point there just got eaten up. Now, when I did this, I thought, I know what the problem is. My measuring was really off on some of the white because I decided I was going to cut a lot in one go. So I got my rotary cutter and I cut, and I could see things were moving as I was cutting. And I thought, oh, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. It wasn't. And you can see there. Now, a lot of people wouldn't mind that. I don't mind it usually, but I thought, let's see if I can get this perfect. So I made another one. And what I found was making a second one immediately after the first mistake has made a huge difference. So if I show you this one, look at that. I mean, there's a little bit more of a white gap there, but none of them have had their points eaten by the geese before, or the goose before. So I definitely did gain from making something twice. I'm not going to do that with my other patches because I don't want to waste the fabric that I got. I don't need 2 of any of them. Plus, I'm never going to make some of those blocks ever again. I did really enjoy them, so I'm not going to make that part of my thing, but these are lovely. And what I'm making, well, I'm thinking, you know what it's like if you're a quilter. You've always got another idea in mind. You're making one quilt and your mind's on another one. Look at the difference in size there, where that one's got swallowed. And I've been thinking of making a low volume quilt. Now, a low volume quilt doesn't mean that it's very quiet. It means that visually it's very quiet. It's low volume. So whereas something like, I just happen to have some patches here. If we take this one here, that's what you would call high volume. There's a lot of colour and noise going on, and it's very attractive. But sometimes you want a calm one. So I'm going to make a calm one, and it's going to be all pale blues, pale greys, whites. I'm not quite sure what other colours I could introduce. I'm going to get some of the old shirts and things that I got and see what I got that's very, very pale. I don't think I'm going to do all the backgrounds white. I may do different shades of like light blue and things for some of the backgrounds. I'm not sure. But I will say, if you haven't tried this flying geese method to make 4 at once and then I joined them together, give it a try. It's like magic. I was doing it and I really wasn't convinced that this is not going to work. But as I started doing it, halfway in I thought I was right. There's no way this can work. It can't work. It's impossible. And then all of a sudden, there it is. So definitely, flying geese 4 at a time. Give it a try. So let's have a look what's in the chest of mystery. So here it is. Let's open it up and see what we've got in it this week. Ooh, a bit of a scratchy noise there. Let's move my book over out of the way. You can see I've been cutting up a lot of old shirts that I've been collecting. And I'll show you these. I'm pretty sure you haven't seen these because I put these in at the end of the last video, ready to show you this video. First thing I want to show you is this. Now, I loved this fabric and I was absolutely amazed how pretty it was. And I thought, oh, it's almost like a Liberty print, but it was just on what seemed to be a cheap version of a skirt. And then when I was just trimming away all the edges, look what I found. Made with Liberty fabrics. You can see it's definitely cut off it because it's got the little tags on it. So this is actually a Liberty fabric. So when you think I got this out of the bins where everything is 20p, nobody wanted it. It was in the Last Chance Hotel. And I got 20p for all that Liberty fabric. Now that can't be bad. And I'm really looking forward to using that. Let's have a look what else I got. I got the usuals. Some check. Let's have a look at all the blue check that I got. There's that one. And I'll move it over so you can see some rummaging. See what's coming. Right, I think that's all the blue check. Then I got some stripes. Now, these are easily identifiable as a shirt. As soon as you see them, you think, ah, that came off a shirt. This one, let's move these over there. Not so much. And I'm trying to get things that don't look like shirts now. I've got quite a few checks ready for the project I've got lined up. So I'm trying to get this sort of thing that could just be a standard fabric. I've got some stripes, but this was off a dress. And if I open that up there, I've even got a little embroidered panel. So I could possibly stick that in the middle of the quilt. Use it like a medallion quilt. Possibly. I don't know. I'll think about it. You know me. Whatever I decide to do now, I'll have changed my mind in no time at all. Some white, always useful. This is nice. It's a very, very pale pink check. If you can see that. There we go. That's in focus. That's so delicate. And I've got this here, which is just a pink. I don't know if the colour's pink enough on the camera. It is a very, very pale pink, but I think they would go nicely in my low volume quilt. So they may find their way in there. I don't know whether to put pink in it or not. I might keep my pinks for pink quilts. I don't know. I got this, which was a shirt. Look at this. That was one jazzy shirt. And it's almost like embroidery on it. It was a bit of a pain because I couldn't tear it. But I've cut it out now and I've got lots on here. And when I'm cutting out patches, if I'm doing English paper piecing, I can make sure that comes where I want it to be. And if I'm going to cut like 2.5-inch strips, I can cut it there and there. So I've got a lovely strip with a blue flower in. So that's got a lot of potential and it's cream. Let's bring it closer. You can see it's got a bit of texture too. And it's like a creamy colour. Right, I've got this, which is a pale. It's not as pale as, let's see if I can find my blocks. Oh no, it is slightly darker. So I can use that in the low volume quilt as well. I'll probably use that for the background rather than the geese. I'm not sure. So we've got this, which is beautiful. Look at that. This came off, let me think now. This was off a dress, a child's dress, I think. Yep, that was off a child's dress. Put it with some pink. Put it with some plain pink. No, I think that's going to need something brighter to jazz it up. A bright but plain. I think that pink, no, it's not too bad. But I think a plain is going to go best with that. And then I got this, which was off apron. Found that on an apron. That was right. That was the pockets on this apron. So they're very nice. I know they go together well. And I've got this here. This is really seeming familiar now because I'm sure I've shown you this, but this was just a piece of a quilt that I was making, I think. I confuse myself sometimes. And then we got this, which was a shirt. Which is, I'm not sure if that's the right side or the wrong side. Let's have a look. No, that's the right side. And it's got like a, can you see that? It's really weird. It's got like this slubby effect, like it's been skagged or snagged, depending on what you say. I know I say skagged, but some people say snagged. Oh, then we got some more shirt-looking material. I've already got one of these, so I've got a lot of this fabric now. Oh, it's got a bit of a stain on it. We'll have to avoid that bit. But it's handy when you find more than one shirt because you've got much more fabric then. And another bit of check. So let's get all these put away. And then I'll put them in the cupboard when I stop filming and we'll see what else I can put into my box of mystery or my chest of mystery. So what have I been up to this week? I've got these squares. These are 4-inch squares. Got my little box with 4-inch squares on the end. Otherwise I forget and then I've got to measure them. This is some 4-inch squares that I bought a while ago from a vintage squares shop, a vintage fabric shop. And they're gorgeous, some of these fabrics. Look at this. They are so vintage. I love them. Look at that. That is one of my favourites. Not sure which is the right side. So I've got lots of those, and also Lexi and Elaine sent me for my birthday, that's these. And I can't remember now, I think there are 80 of these. So I want to make them stretch. I don't want to just put them together in a standard pattern like that because they're so nice. I want to make them last a bit longer. So I've been cutting 4-inch white squares out of all the little bits of white sheet that I got left over from lining one of my quilts. And you can see if I do half square triangles, they're very pretty now. I think they're even prettier than if you just leave them plain. So I think that is going to be, I'll tell you what, it'll take me a couple of seconds. You can see that's going to be very pretty when it's put together like that. And then the way I make them is I put them together and then I'll sew from corner to corner and then cut off with a seam allowance. But before I cut it off, if I sew the other side of where I'm going to cut, and then I've got one big half square triangle and one medium-sized half square triangle that I can then use for another quilt, if you see what I mean. So that's what I've been doing, and that is taking me so long. For some reason, the blade on my rotary cutter is starting to cut wobbly, and I'm not sure because it's a fairly new blade. It just suddenly started doing it. I think what it is my cutting mat that I have in the other room where I cut sometimes because it's much lighter. The sun has been shining in and I get the feeling maybe it's affected the mat and it's making it wobbly. I don't know. Can that happen? Possibly, possibly not. I could be just inventing that and it's a load of rubbish. So there we go. I've been cutting those up. Now, I'm going away, as I said, in just under 2 weeks. So I'm going to be putting a video out next week. But while I'm away, I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to make a video. So I've decided that I've got do you remember I had a box of buttons for £1? Well, I've decided to do one video just on looking through those buttons. There are so many, I couldn't show them all. It would take hours. So I've just looked for some interesting ones to show you. So that'll be coming out while I'm away. If I pick up any fabric when I'm in France, and if I can get the bandwidth on the internet, it's always hit or miss, then I may be putting out a French fabric video. So keep your eye out for that because it is lovely to get fabric from another country and see what it's like. And also, there's a place I go and sometimes you get vintage French fabric and that is absolutely gorgeous. So we've got lots of things coming up. But for the next week and a half till I go, I'm going to be working on my nightmare quilt. I know, look at that. The more I look at that. That is not wavy, is it? It's a bit of a mess. So I'll be working on this. If you're thinking, I wonder what Caroline's doing at the moment. Not that you ever would. They think she's probably unpicking all that horrible quilting. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up before you leave. And as always, I'll just say, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Because otherwise you'll never find me again. That's just the nature of YouTube. I'll see you all next time. But until then, don't forget, happy stitching and have fun. Bye.